Today, we're going to tear down what looks like a totally normal sixth grade English worksheet. But, hidden inside its structure is this really powerful conviction. We're going to deconstruct this lesson, bit by bit, and uncover the deep philosophy that's really driving its design. It's a fascinating look at where teaching methods and purpose really intersect. So, the lesson kicks off with this short little fluency passage. And this isn't just some poetic warm-up, okay? This is the central metaphor for everything that comes next. It immediately frames a piece of writing not as just a bunch of words, but as an intentional blueprint, a carefully built design that's meant to guide you, the reader.
All right, so if a text is a blueprint, then what are the tools that the architect, the author, is using to build it? Well, that brings us right to our first section, where the lesson asks students to start decoding those exact tools.
The lesson breaks the tools down into two big categories. Over on the left, you've got text features. These are the structural things, the organizational bits. Think of them like the walls and beams of a house. Then on the right, you have author's craft. These are the stylistic choices, the techniques that create a certain feeling or effect. This is the paint, the lighting, the whole interior design vibe.
So let's look at one of those craft tools, personification. The lesson defines it simply, giving human qualities to non-human things. But the example here is everything. The sky swallowed the light. I mean, that's so much more powerful than just saying the sun set, right?
Next up, we've got imagery. This is language that literally paints a picture by hitting you in the senses. And the example here is just fantastic. The fire crackled like a warning. You don't just see the fire, you hear it, and you get this little feeling of unease. That's the power of a well-chosen craft element.
And a third tool the lesson points out is repetition. Its job is pretty simple. Emphasis, just driving a point home. The example, she walked and walked and walked. It gives you this feeling of endlessness and exhaustion way better than saying she walked for a very long time. The structure itself creates the feeling.
And this is where the lesson makes these ideas really stick. See, it's not about just memorizing definitions. This matching exercise, which is pulled right from the worksheet, it forces students to connect the abstract tool to its specific real-world function or example. They have to prove they can spot these tools out in the wild.
So, once a student can identify the tools, what's the next logical step? Well, it's time to use them. And that brings us to the next section, where the lesson asks the student to become the architect themselves.
The assignment is pretty straightforward, but it's also really smart. First, pick a topic. Second, write a short paragraph that intentionally uses at least 2 structural features and 1 craft element. And then, this is the crucial part, step 3, label your work. This really drills home that idea of conscious design. You're not just writing, you're building, and you need to know every part of your creation.
Now, up to this point, this is a very solid, well-designed English lesson. But this is where the lesson pivots, and it reveals its deeper purpose. We're now moving into section 3, connecting craft and faith. This single verse from Psalm 33 acts as the bridge. It completely shifts the focus of the lesson, from the craft of human authors to the intentional design of a divine one. It's the anchor for the whole theological reflection that's about to happen. The lesson then puts this question directly to the students. And just think about how this reframes everything they've just learned. All of a sudden, author's craft isn't just a tool for analyzing poems or stories. It becomes a lens for understanding the very fabric of Scripture. The lesson is literally asking students to apply their literary analysis skills to their faith.
And to make sure that connection is crystal clear, the lesson provides this little fun fact. It takes that abstract idea of a divine author's craft and gives a super concrete example. It's telling the students that the very tools they just studied are right there in one of the most complex books of the Bible.
And here are those tools, laid out plain as day. The lesson explicitly points out that things like headings, symbolism, imagery, and repetition, they aren't just secular literary devices. No, they're essential to the design of Scripture itself, used to guide readers through what it calls deep truth. So this brings us to the big question. Why? Why construct an English lesson this way, mixing literary analysis so directly with theological reflection? That brings us to our final section, which explains the guiding philosophy behind this entire curriculum. This one single, powerful sentence. This is the core belief of the curriculum's creators, HeroesMart Academy. Their whole philosophy is that the goal of education isn't just to pick up knowledge. It absolutely has to be intertwined with morality to prevent it from becoming harmful. This slide, referencing the book of Romans, shows you the ultimate stakes of that philosophy. It presents this really clear choice between two mindsets and where they lead. The curriculum's goal is to guide students toward what it calls the spiritual mind, which, as it states, leads to life and peace.
And that brings us to the ultimate why behind this whole lesson structure. From defining personification all the way to analyzing scripture, every single step is designed to achieve a very specific outcome: peace of mind, which the curriculum suggests is found by having a spiritual focus in everything you learn.
So we end right where we began, with this idea of a page as a design or a path. The lesson's final takeaway leaves us with a really thought-provoking question. What if every intentional choice, whether it's by an author in a story or a teacher in a curriculum, is a deliberate attempt to guide us all toward the light?